Stan Efferding, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
What do you think are the main causes of the obesity epidemic? Why is it that the average American's got so much fatter over the last few decades?
I don't want to talk about what Stan thinks. I want to talk about what we see as probably what the academic community's consensus is. I'm kind of a collator of information as a personal trainer for 30 years, and I want to deliver that information to my clients and make sure it's evidence-based. And so I'll refrain from opinions. I've tried that in the past, and I've been probably correctly and soundly informed of my inaccuracy. So at the core of it all, we're consuming more calories than we used to 50 years ago. We know that from all the research. And the majority of those calories, or the cause of that, seems to be hyperpalatable, ultra-processed foods. And it seems to have interfered with our ability to become satiated. And so we're eating too much. And we're in this food environment where that's really easy to do. It's hard to shut it off. And so it really is calories. And I know that sparks a whole bunch of bad feelings from folks. You know, it kind of gets you those straw man arguments about Kiko, calories in, calories out, it doesn't work and all of that. But it's more complex than that. I've said, move more, eat less is truthful, but not useful.
Necessary, but not sufficient, perhaps?
Yeah. Well, it is what's happening, and it is the solution. But it's simple, but it's not easy. And so there's a whole host of factors I think we can dive into on that. But fact of the matter is, it is calories. The Kiko is an oversimplification. It's actually an energy balance equation that accounts for all of these variables, which we may talk about: the total daily energy intake minus the total daily energy expenditure. And there's a whole host of things that go into both sides of that equation that it really accounts for just about everything that goes into weight gain.
Why is calories in, calories out, and diet fads and discussions in general so emotionally charged? I would think that this would just be, I'm not calling you a good or a bad person. There's no reason for you to believe that you are anything. This isn't a comment on you. And yet diet discussions online are some of the most virulent and aggressive that you see.
They really are. I think part of it might just be that we want to find, I said, pin the tail on the donkey, find one single source that maybe is something that we could fix if we just got rid of it. The carbohydrate insulin model spawned from that, where if you eat a grape and your insulin goes up, that you're going to gain fat, and you can't lose you can't lose fat. Demonizing certain foods became very popular. There's still a lot of that going on, whether it's fructose or seed oils or anything that might correlate with overconsumption. I think also that when you talk about calories in, calories out, it seems to blame the victim, the individual who's having a hard time losing weight. They become, you blame them. You're overeating, you're lazy, you're undisciplined, that kind of thing, without paying attention to all the other factors that go into that. And it's just an oversimplification.
I suppose that calories in, calories out, when you fold in how hyperpalatable these new foods are, it's not putting all of the blame at the feet of the victim. It's like, look, this is a relatively unfair battle because of how well engineered these foods are for you to overeat. Now, ultimately, it's you that put it in your mouth, but it is a more difficult uphill climb.
Agreed. And another problem is that while we have a genetic predisposition, obviously now we're starting to see that certain people have different hunger signaling.
Ghrelin release,
leptin sensitivity or lack thereof. And certain people, while we don't believe their basal metabolic rate is significantly different, we do see that some people are more active, what we call non-exercise activity thermogenesis, than others. My son and daughter's like that. My son, you have to almost check and see if he's breathing when he's sitting there watching TV sometimes. It's like a zombie. And my daughter can't sit down. And she's humming all the time and tapping her toes and bouncing around and skipping, and she has to get up. And two very different movement patterns. And people with high non-exercise activity thermogenesis can burn over 1,000 calories a day more than somebody with low non-exercise activity thermogenesis. We see that in active individuals versus, say, sedentary jobs versus, say, a construction worker or a waitress as opposed to a desk worker. So we see a lot of calories can be accounted for in that component of the equation, the energy balance equation. So those things all play into it. And then there's also a big social component. We talk about some folks in lower socioeconomic environments are exposed to more of this hyperpalatable ultra-processed food from an earlier age. It's very affordable. It's very convenient and accessible, and that has a huge impact.
What role does the formative years of growing up have on our palate and what we enjoy? There's a period of life, I think it's between about 10 and 15, and the music that you listen to during that time is very formative for the kind of music that you will enjoy throughout the rest of your life. Are you aware if there's an equivalent when it comes to tastes and diets and stuff?
I'm not sure, but I think that, obviously children are going to migrate towards the kind of foods that taste the best, presuming they're allowed in the home in to whatever degree. But we do see that children with obese parents who tend to gain more weight at an earlier age and have a higher likelihood of becoming obese as they get older. So it is definitely a problem that has to be addressed at a very early age.
You mentioned seed oils, which is one of the 4 horsemen of the diet apocalypse. I'm not sure what the other 3 are.
Yeah.
Just how bad are seed oils? What's the truth about them?
Well, before we jumped on here, I talked about people evolve, science evolves. When you overlay a graph of seed oil consumptions against obesity, you see a very strong correlation. I mean, they would just look identical. And so one would, correlation does not equal causation. One would think that was one of the potential causes. Everything else seems to have gone down over time. Fructose, the sugar consumption, seems to have stabilized or gone down over time. But seed oils, like a lot of things, how can I best explain this? They're not all the same thing. So here's what the academic community is saying now, that we don't have any evidence that seed oils cause inflammation in their natural form, if that can even be said about seed oils. There's nothing natural necessarily about them. But in so much as they are a part of processed foods, ultra-processed foods, about 70% of seed oils are consumed as a part of ultra-processed foods and fast foods. Now, seed oils reheated, think French fries, any of those chicken McNuggets, whatever, in those big vats of oil that you reheat, those do show an inflammatory response and increase of cardiovascular disease risk. So that is a problem. I did a video many years ago. It said the real poison that's killing us. So I'm certainly guilty of having put all seed oils into one bucket. But in that video, I did say I'm biased. They are a poison to me. Seed oils, I discovered many years later, give me diarrhea. And I go into great detail if anybody wants to know, if it's not TMI, in my video. It's one of those where you're running to the bathroom and you can't quite make it. And you have to stop and do that Kegel exercise, or something bad's going to happen before you get there. It's one of those deals. And it's very unique to seed oils. And I know when I've consumed too much of them, flat iron steak cooked in a big pool of seed oil at a restaurant. Otherwise, I wouldn't have a problem if it was grilled on a flame, or when I cook it at home in a Ninja grill or something. Very different response. Even going to restaurants and getting, I own a meal prep company, and so we have to get eggs for the meal prep company. And some of those eggs come in 5-gallon buckets, like at, some of the restaurants that you would eat at, a Denny's or the like. And they just ladle the eggs and put them on the grill. And so I would ask, please, no oils, because I'm allergic to these oils. Well, come to find out, a lot of those buckets of eggs, we had a hard time finding them that weren't already adulterated with seed oils, whether it was canola oil or soybean oil, partly for preservation, because it is a preservative, but probably partly because that's an inexpensive additive, which would, increase, I guess, the profit margin on the 5-gallon bucket. When I would consume those, because there's already seed oil in the mixture, then I would have the same problem. And so it's been very difficult for me over the years. I used to love to go to some of these, what are those all-you-can-eat grills that they have and they just get steak and chicken and rice and have them grill them. But they would put a big ladle of these oils on there to cook it in, and I would have gastric distress. So as a personal matter, I've objected quite strongly. I went down the Weston A. Price rabbit hole and Nina Teicholz's rabbit hole for seed oils, and I was fully on that team. But the literature does not support, if you're not allergic to them like I am, and you're not reheating them or over consuming them, it doesn't support any other adverse effect than that.
Have you got any idea how common a adverse reaction or a intolerance of seed oils is?
I don't. And I used to think it was relatively common because a lot of people would suffer from IBS and IBD, but I can't make that assessment. I just know that's how I respond. And I have, of course, in my business, come across a lot of people who maybe felt that was the same, but I just don't think there's research to support it.
You had a problem with one of the great American institutions that I'm a massive fan of, Cheesecake Factory.
Yeah.
They diddled you. They diddled you with a burger, maybe.
Yeah. Now, I can get one of my favorite meals that I've been promoting for years is the Monster Mash. I trademarked that Monster Mash, and it's just a blend of, say, ground beef or bison with white rice and some bone broth. And I'll mash all that together. I might cook some peppers and throw it in there, a little bit of spinach, and maybe even a scrambled egg. And this is my mash. I make this and sell it, ship it all over the States to people, and I give it to all my clients that Hafthor Bjornsson and Brian Shaw and the rest of them. Lane Johnson's favorite meal, the Monster Mash, and so I can get that meal at Cheesecake Factory, but they will either baste or put the burger in, sear it first in vegetable oil before they put it on the flame grill, to prevent it from burning, to keep it. The same thing would be true, say, of those roasted chickens, the rotisserie chickens at Costco. They baste those with a vegetable oil because it helps prevent them from burning. They can cook there a little longer. And so those are the little things I have to watch out for. So yes, Cheesecake Factory is my one device, but because I'm so OCD and I'm a creature of habit, that ever since I've been going there, I go order my little Monster Mash from them. I get a side hamburger patty, a side of white rice, a side of bone broth, maybe throw in some pickles, and of course the sourdough bread is always good. And that's my favorite meal at Cheesecake. And I don't much participate in desserts. I've never been that way. Needless to say, my wife and kids order something very different. But that's my favorite spot to stop at, because they're generally in every big city in the country, and I travel a lot.